What's going on, guys? VitalSyntax here, and these are my initial thoughts on Battlefield 4 on the PlayStation 4. Now, the gameplay you guys are seeing is not from the PlayStation 4, it's from the PC platform. Unfortunately, the PlayStation has copyright protection on the HDMI stream, and there's no component output, so you have to buy an HDMI capture card and an HDMI copyright stripper in order to record gameplay, and that's a couple $100, so I figured I just use some PC gameplay. I might have to later down the line get something set up like that for the PlayStation to record for something like a console exclusive like Destiny that's not going to be on the PC, but I decided I'd just use PC gameplay for Battlefield 4 because honestly they're actually very similar experiences across the two different platforms, and I'll talk more about that in a second. That's a pretty awesome thing. So first thing I want to talk about with my initial thoughts for Battlefield 4 on the PlayStation was the technical specifications of what the game is actually running at, what frame rate, what resolution, and a couple other details about the graphics. So the game runs at 900p, and if you have a 1080p, that means a 1080p screen means it's going to be upsampled. I'm not sure what the horizontal resolution or pixels of a 900 vertical pixel by 16 by 9 aspect ratio is, but it's 900p. Whatever. It runs at 60 frames per second. It'll drop occasionally. I noticed on some of the maps like Flood Zone, it'll drop probably once or twice a game down to about 40 or 50 FPS. But on a lot of the other maps, it doesn't drop at all. And if it does drop, it'll drop like once a game, and it doesn't happen all that often. When it does drop, it's still not dropping down that low. It might drop down to 50 frames, might drop down to 40 frames, but usually it's not dropping to 30 or never below 30, at least as far as I noticed. So overall, the frame rate is incredibly smooth. It looks really good. Definitely got some VSync going on, so there's no tearing, there's no ripping or anything like that in the visual image, which looks great. And the game doesn't run at 1080p, so if you have a 1080p screen, it is going to be upsampled, like I said. So it looks a little blurred and a little muddled, but that's not bad at all in my opinion. And they have a little bit of anti-aliasing going on, so it makes it look smoother, and there's no jaggies or stair-stepping effect if you don't have something like anti-aliasing turned on. It's not quite as much anti-aliasing as you can get on something like the PC platform. I'm guessing they're using something like FXAA or 2x MSAA, so it looks good, it looks smooth, but if you sit really close to the TV, yeah, you can still see some jagged lines going on, which in my opinion is totally fine. I actually don't really use anti-aliasing all that much, especially with the performance hit that you get by turning it really high. So beyond the resolution and the frame rate, the game looks phenomenal. I mean, they've got a lot of post-processing effects, things like ambient occlusion. You can notice if you walk up to a wall or something, you'll notice that your weapon gives off a shadow, and easy way to tell that they have ambient occlusion. I'm not sure if it's SSAO, screen space ambient occlusion, or if it's HABO, or what other implementation they're using, but it looks great as far as shadows and darkening of different areas of shadows. And the detail of the game is really good. The draw distance is really good. It looks almost on par with the PC. I'm guessing that the settings are somewhere between medium and ultra. Probably most of them are on high, but if you are running on a PC, you can get higher resolution, above 900p, 1080p, or 1440p if you want, or even 4K. Hell, if you have the horsepower, you can obviously get a higher frame rate than 60 FPS. You can get more post-processing effects and things like that. I even noticed they had motion blur on the console, which is that's a pretty taxing post-processing effect that adds a lot of smoothness and stuff to the image. So that was pretty cool to see that in there. I personally would rather have it off, but and for most people, I think that they'll like that effect and it'll make the game look and feel a little bit smoother. But overall, amazed by the graphics, especially that it's running on a $400 piece of hardware. It's insane. If you built a gaming PC for $400, it would be nowhere near that performance, and that's really the only big advantage that the PlayStation 4 has over a gaming PC in my eyes, is the fact that it's so dang cheap for how much horsepower you're getting. Xbox One's a little bit more on the fence because it's $100 more and it's less powerful, but regardless, I don't want to get too much into the platform comparison in this video. So other than graphics, which once again look absolutely phenomenal, let's talk about the gameplay, the controls, how responsive it feels, because that's a big thing for first-person shooters, and something that Call of Duty has always done right is the controls are spot on. They feel very responsive and very snappy. And I felt like Battlefield 3 on previous gen consoles did not feel snappy at all. It felt chunky, it felt muddled, it felt laggy. Whereas now that they have 60 frames per second, now that they have a better controller, in my opinion, with the PlayStation 4 controller, The controls are awesome. They feel spot on. They feel super snappy. They feel just as good as Call of Duty Ghosts on the PlayStation 4, and I tried them back to back. I was playing Call of Duty Ghosts, or actually my brother was playing Call of Duty Ghosts. I played a game at the end, and then I switched over to Battlefield 4, and I was like, hey, check this out. Look at this game, and I was trying to get him into it, and he's starting to get into it. He's mostly a Call of Duty player, but I think I'll eventually be able to get him to play Battlefield more and more. And from what we played, for when he played the other day, I could tell he was really liking it. So I guess that's thumbs up if you're a Call of Duty player. I think there's a good chance you'll like Battlefield quite a bit this generation, a lot more, just because it has that same responsiveness, that same kind of snappiness that Call of Duty has kind of always touted. They've always had, oh, it's 60 FPS on consoles, which, I mean, 60 FPS, that's like a minimum on PC in my opinion. But it's true. A lot of games last generation ran at 30 FPS, which sucked. I couldn't stand it. But yeah, now that Battlefield 4 is 60 FPS, 64 players, going up from 24 players on previous gen, it's an awesome game. So control-wise are spot on. Frame rate is almost spot on. There's a couple dips. Graphically, looks amazing. It's smooth. It's buttery. It's really good experience. The server browser was easy to use. The interface works pretty well. There's a couple of things that were kind of frustrating, like viewing something like the scoreboard. You have to press options, go down to the scoreboard, press X. There's no back button or option button anymore because now it's the share button, which is kind of weird. I feel like that you could use the touchpad, or they should use the touchpad for something more useful. I don't even know if it's used for anything right now, which is kind of frustrating. But overall, I mean, the game is awesome. It's a really good game, especially on the PlayStation 4. I haven't had a chance to play it on the Xbox One yet. You know, I still am going to be playing it on PC, just personally because that's my favorite platform. But for people out there that are on a budget, that are going to be getting a PlayStation 4, you know, for the holiday season, or have already picked one up, in my opinion, Battlefield 4, out of the games I've played, which I guess isn't that many yet, but out of even the games that I've seen, Battlefield 4, in my opinion, is the best game out there for the PlayStation 4. Now, I'm obviously coming from a biased standpoint because Battlefield 4 is my favorite game so far, any multiplayer game I've played, and Battlefield 3 before it was my favorite multiplayer game of all time. It's the game that I've put more hours into than any other game. As far as multiplayer games goes, once again, I want to emphasize that. There's some single-player games out there that I've played quite a bit more. Fallout Skyrim. But, yeah. To summarize my initial thoughts and impressions of the game, it's amazing on PlayStation 4. It rivals the PC platform very closely. And if you're going to be getting a PlayStation 4, I think it's a must-have game for any first-person shooter fans out there. So if you guys have any questions about the game and how it performs, or any other technical things that you want to know about it on the PlayStation 4, if you're going to be picking up pretty soon and you have any questions, leave them down in the comments down below, and I'll be looking through those, answering any questions you guys have. But yeah, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, feel free to leave me a like or a favorite, and I'll see you guys in the next video.